Welcome to the program. This is Mondo Gonzalez here on location in Nashville, Tennessee, and I am here at the Birthright conference, which happened over the last couple of days. And I asked Timothy if he would be willing to give us kind of a post-conference update. So welcome.
Thanks for having me.
This conference was truly great. I mean, and that's not flattering in a sense. The topics you guys discussed were incredible. But before we go there, kind of talk a little bit about, if you will, for the audience, how, if they weren't here, how they can see it.
The conference, we filmed the conference, so it's going to be available in digital format. We're going to have it up on a Vimeo page. You can go to birthrightconference.com, and you'll be able to go and find basically it's a long-term rental of the conference, over 6 hours of content at a really great price on the Vimeo On Demand platform. So people can actually access it right through our website, birthrightconference.com.
Awesome. You know, the title of this conference was Transhumanism, Aliens, UFOs, and the Bible. I mean,
I think we covered all of it.
Yeah, you did. And I mean, you think about the topics of really what I would say cutting-edge Bible prophecy. That was the other end Bible prophecy. But what I thought was good is kind of talk about the speakers that you had.
Yeah, this was a really unique group of guys that we were able to bring together for this. Obviously, myself, Gary Haven, who's a super interesting guy, the founder of Curves International with his wife Diane, and people may be familiar with Joe Allen through Steve Bannon's War Room podcast. Joe is Bannon's correspondent on transhumanism. I think Joe Allen knows more about transhumanism than anyone certainly that I've ever met, and his talk was just absolutely phenomenal. And then we had Mancow Muller. He gave us an impromptu comedy show.
He did. It was great.
Which was hilarious. Something you don't often see in a conference. So it was just great. Everybody did a phenomenal job, and it all connected well together. And it was just an eclectic group of speakers.
You know, talk about your heart, because you know, if you know Timothy, in the sense that as I've talked to you, and all these topics are fun, they're interesting, they draw people in, and we talked about this yesterday or the day before when we did a little interviewing, but where's the gospel in all this?
Right at the center. And that's what's so exciting about these topics to me, whether it's transhumanism, UFOs and aliens. The gospel is at the center of these topics, certainly transhumanism, because we're and this is what I talked about in my first presentation, we are transitioning into a post-human paradigm. And so it's essential for us to understand what it means to be human. But because of transhumanism and the technologies that are making it, are facilitating our transition into a post-human species, which means no longer human, we need to really make sure that we are firmly grounded in the gospel of Christ, and recognizing that Jesus became one of us. He became a man to redeem mankind. So what happens when we become something other than human? Well, we become unredeemable or irredeemable, for one thing, but also we lose our dominion on earth. So it's right at the core of the gospel and of the biblical paradigm.
You know, when you think about, I think, as it relates to Jesus' humanity, Hebrews chapter 2, you know, did Jesus give aid to angels? You know, and of course the writer is making this contrast between the superiority of Jesus. And clearly he says, no, he gives aid to Abraham and mankind.
That's right.
So it's interesting right there, if you extrapolate, which is what you kind of did, you extrapolate backwards and you're like, humanity is so important. Jesus wasn't an angel, he wasn't Michael, he's a human forever.
That's right.
He didn't come to redeem anything else that's out there. I mean, this is a very Christ-centric, but within the context of this creature that he made as humanity.
That's right. And somebody asked me, I think a question came my way yesterday, and I don't think I answered it, like, why humanity? Why do you do it for humanity? And I don't think any of us can answer that question. I think that the angels were flabbergasted at what he did for us. And so that's really, it's a mystery. Why God would send his son to die for us who are made lower than the angels. It's really quite amazing, you know? And I think that's a question that we can't really answer.
Yeah. It's amazing too, because you think, again, the goal is biblical theology here, but in 1 Peter 1:12, as it's talking about the whole plan of salvation, and Peter writes, these are things that the angels desire to look into. I mean, it's
Fellowship of the mystery,
Yes.
hidden in Christ.
Yep. Why did God do it? Well, that's because He wanted to. You know.
Yeah.
I want to get your thoughts too on this. I didn't ask you yesterday, but in that same Hebrews 2 passage, which he quotes Psalm 8, it talks about mankind being made a little lower than the angels. But in the New Testament quotes the Septuagint version. And it's not in the Hebrew, but in the Septuagint, and it quoted inspired scripture, for a little while. And it wasn't just talking about Jesus. This is talking about that mankind, Jesus, of course, is the pinnacle, became human. He's human forever. But the position of mankind is lower than the angels for a little while.
That's right. And that goes back to the parable of the prodigal son. Because in the parable of the prodigal son, the siblings were equals in the father's estate. And so I believe that
there's an elevation, right? I mean,
right, because we're going back into the family through Christ.
Through Christ,
and Christ
100%.
is the preeminent Son. So I think that when we go back into the family of God at the resurrection, because that's what Jesus says, that we're going to be like the angels, being sons of the resurrection. So the resurrection is going to rectify the human condition and reset us to the blueprint of Adam, bring us back into the family. But we might even have a little bit of a higher stature when we go back into the family because of Jesus, because it's the second Adam. So I think that's very interesting, that translation, and I think there's something to it. We're going to be on equal footing with our older siblings.
It's interesting, the whole divine counsel idea, because one of the passages that comes to mind is 1 Corinthians 6:3, where Paul says, he says, the typical is, don't you know that we're going to judge angels? But I think so often people say, okay, we're going to stand there, we're going to give the sentence against Satan. I don't think that's what it's saying.
No.
It means we're going to adjudicate. We're going to be part of the divine council, the ruling council.
I agree.
And there's going to be these servant angels, a little lower, but...
And even more specifically, I think that might be referencing directly the angels that trespassed in our realm, because this is our realm, and we are the vice regents of planet Earth. And so those entities which trespass and which transgress in our realm, we have authority to judge them. Just like if America has a superior civilization, let's say, or at least we have a more technically advanced society than, say, Peru. But if I were to go to Peru and break the laws there, or anywhere, some backwoods place in Africa or India, break the law in any other country, even though I come from America and perhaps a superior judicial system and so forth, I'm still subject to the laws of these other foreign places, regardless of where I came from. And so I would be subject to whatever judgment that would come down through their legal system. In the same way, whatever entities transgress in our realm, I think that we are going to have the authority to pass judgment on what they did, because we're the vice regents of Earth. And so I think that when we judge angels, it's specifically going to be, at least first and foremost, going to be those angels which transgressed in our realm.
It's when you look at that same passage, you think, okay, because I agree, like, okay, we have to take care of business here as mankind. Jesus is coming. Hey, you guys are ruling and reigning with me. We're going to sentence them. I think what you do see, though, is in this continuation of rulership, this adjudication over at least some angels, because he says there in Hebrews 2.
I agree.
Is the world to come? He didn't subject it to angels.
Exactly.
Right? So we have kind of this.
Exactly.
Hey.
That's right. Because through Christ.
Through Christ.
Because Christ became one of us. So something happened when when the Father saw fit to send His Son to die for us. Something happened. There was an elevation that happened, because now we are, again, the parable of the prodigal son. It's not by our merit by any means that we're brought back into the family. See, the prodigal son has new clothes put on him, a new robe, sandals on his feet. That's the resurrection, the righteousness of Christ. He justifies us.
Absolutely.
He reconciles us to the Father. So the fact that we're brought back into the family through Christ, it's like as we said, like an elevation of stature, even above what Adam was, I think, because we're coming back into the family through the second Adam.
Glorified.
Right, and the Savior, the Son of God, is now one of us.
Yeah. Permanently.
Forever.
I think people miss that.
Yeah, forever. And so that's that's an upgrade in stature
Yeah.
in Christ. So it's really exciting. And
We're co-heirs, right? We're joint
co-heirs.
heirs with
That's
him.
right. Yep. Joint heirs with Christ. That's exactly right. So whatever, if you're joint heirs with Christ, whatever He's ruling and reigning over,
we're in the family. I mean, so
we are in the family.
Yep.
That's right.
And so we're at a deficient status at the moment. But again, the heart of all this is, again, it points us back to Jesus and what He did on the cross, but also our future. I think so oftentimes we get stuck in the here and now and we forget. Let's talk a little bit about these topics, because I think my heart is for the church, in the sense of the people out there that are really they're into this, they're excited. A lot of times maybe they're pastors or other Christians, they're confused, they don't know. The idea of transhumanism, let's talk about these three topics quickly if we can. I mean, I'm not on a time frame, but the hard data. Transhumanism, is it make-believe, or is there real hard data? What's going on with it?
Transhumanism is, maybe a decade ago, it was sort of this nebulous concept that only certain people knew about, only certain intellectuals and prophecy people. But now, just like UFOs, transhumanism is now becoming a public topic. The public is being made aware of transhumanism through guys like Elon Musk, for example, that you hear the term transhumanism in the news now, which you never heard transhumanism in the news. Now you're hearing, just like UFOs are being taken seriously, transhumanism is just showing up all over the place in articles in the New York Times, and it's just taken for granted now that people know that transhumanism is a thing. And so there are techtechnoloties that are being developed.
Maybe night vision. I mean, all these things that they can do, right?
That's right.
Yep.
Maybe, you're talking about cybernetic enhancement. So that's where we're headed. It's going to be a different species. It will no longer be the human species. That's where we're headed.
What I appreciated Joe talking about is, and if this is new to you, again, these are these interesting concepts that we have that ultimately point us back to the gospel. Are they as important as the gospel in the sense? No, we know that, but yet God wants us to be knowledgeable about all these things. What I thought was interesting was that those people that are transhumanists, they believe in evolution, they believe it's gotten here, and they decide, hey, we appreciate the way that nature, according to them, not that I believe in evolution, but nature has provided us this. We're going to take it from here.
That's right.
And so the thing that I thought was that we have to take it serious is how much money is involved.
Oh, a lot of money. Yeah, and that's
and the people.
Yeah, that's called directed evolution. It's like evolution by natural selection got us this far, but yeah, we'll take it from here. We're going to upgrade our species now. We're going to expedite the process of evolution and take it into our own hands. That's called directed evolution. That's exactly what's going on right now. And there's a lot of money in it. I mean,
Silicon Valley, right?
Yeah, and the global elite, the World Economic Forum are all about upgrading humanity because they view us as a danger and a plague to the planet right now. And so we need to we need to basically get rid of the Homo sapien as he is now, and we need to upgrade the human species into something more sustainable for the environment.
I mean, in one sense, we have been devolving, and here we are with, again, mutations. Sanford's book, genetic entropy, tremendously powerful because it's just the data.
Yeah, indisputable.
Yeah, indisputable. And they look at it and they're like, well, man, this is going down, but they don't realize why. We are the proof. We are the negation of the theory of evolution as it pertains to the genetic ascendancy of the human species, because we're not evolving, we're not continually evolving into a superior form of hominid or ape. We are gradually devolving from a superior human being, Adam. And it is crystal clear. We know that more now than ever.
And you know what? Population geneticists know this. They know this. This isn't a mystery. And so I suspect that a lot of geneticists doubt the Darwinism. They probably secretly are thinking there's no way that evolution, at least as it pertains to the human species, can be true, because they're seeing the gradual genetic degeneration.
The harmful nature of a mutation.
Right. And the best that they can find, meaning evolutionary biologists, the best that they can say about a mutation is it's neutral.
Yep.
And then they say, well, if you get enough neutral mutations,
wishful thinking.
You're right. You get enough neutral mutations, then eventually you're going to get evolution by natural selection.
It's exciting too, in the sense, I mean, we're waiting for Jesus' return, and he's not caught off guard. He obviously saw the destruction nature of sin, and so we're a few generations away from. Yeah. And then you think transhumanism is a complex topic, and we've summarized it, I think, very well. Why should they care?
Because these are the times in which we live, and you should especially care if you have children and grandchildren, because they're going to be. Yuval Harari, who's the he's sort of the globalist elite, the World Economic Forum's prophet of the new age. Yuval Harari, he's a complicated character. He's the professor. He's a professor from the Hebrew University, Jerusalem, and he's sort of a futurist professor. And Harari predicts that the human species is gone within 100 to 300 years. It's gone. We will be transitioned into a post-human paradigm, and again that post-human will be as different from us as we are from apes, and so again, right on time for the end of the age. I mean, there's no way. We are living in the end times. Now, I don't think we're at the very end of the end times. I think we're in the beginning of the end of the age. Because remember, it's not about the end times, it's about the end of the age. And when you talk about the end of the age, I believe we're talking about the age that was inaugurated with the birth of Christ. And when this age is completed, then Christ will return.
I mean, he uses that language. I mean, Matthew 28, I'll be with you till the end of the age. You know, I mean, that's...
And an age was not an abstract thing. In the ancient world, everybody knew what an age was. So, that's a long conversation. It's 2,160 years. That's how long an age is. And so if you calculate, I believe that Christ inaugurated, and that's one of the reasons why the Magi, the men from the East, knew that a great king had been born, because his birth corresponded with the inauguration of a new age, the age in which we are in now, and an age is 2,160 years. Well, we're 2022, right? So we're
getting... add another 5 if Jesus was born in 5 BC, whatever.
I think he was born in 5 BC, 4 or 5 BC. So we are now in the end of the age, not at the very end, but we're in the end of the age, and none of this surprises God. He knew about our genetic clock and degeneration and everything that's happening. So we are certainly in the end of the age. We are in the beginning of the end of the age. That's I think an accurate statement. You know,
one of the things that we like to do in the sense of is we like to talk about hard data. I mean, my background's science, and so we want to talk about the hard data first. So we talked about transhumanism. The money's there. The technology is getting up in there, and it makes it. If you care about your kids, grandkids, again, this is the time to educate them, to learn yourself. Let's talk about the next topic as it relates to aliens.
Yeah, and to put one more footnote on that last conversation. You care about your kids and your grandkids. Well, it's time to teach them the importance of being a human being and remaining human no matter what, so that they can qualify for salvation in Christ. That is the most important thing.
We think about often with I said this yesterday in talking to you, but that I feel bad for like my kids and my grandkids and others, because they've been raised in the digital world.
I do too, yeah. And that's,
it's hard for them to have a chance.
That's why Joe Ellen's talk was so powerful, because at the end of his talk on transhumanism, I loved what he said, like, we need to value what it is to be human. We need to return to it. We need to value people, not machines and technology. We need to return to our values as a human species, value the human species.
Without the digital.
It's amazing that we have to say that, isn't it?
So. And it's only, you think about them and again, them growing up with a smartphone or a screen in their face, as well as watching the opportunity. Imagine if self-esteem, we know is an issue. But wow, you're promising me I could be like the Marvel hero? I could be like that? I mean,
that's right.
That's a huge temptation.
That is a temptation. It's a bowl of stew.
Yep, it's a bowl of stew. Yep, exactly.
So now we can talk about UFOs. I just wanted to put that book in, because people say, well, what should I do? Well, first of all, you got to make sure your kids understand the gospel of Christ as it pertains to the human species.
And don't be willing to, like, again, Birthright. Your whole book's about it. what we've been watching is, I think there's a certain remnant. I mean, not that all people that aren't involved in this, in the sense of Christians, aren't Christians, but God is waking people up, and He's doing it through a variety of means. Again, the hard data. So when we think about, let's skip over aliens for a moment. We'll go to UFOs, because that seems to be, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, if you believe in Roswell, conspiracy, yeah, tin hat, whatever. You spent some time talking about just quoting the government.
Yeah.
So if you're watching this and you've been scared to talk about it, and you're like, we don't need it. There's no shame in this anymore,
just
right?
Just watch Tucker Carlson, or some of these other news personalities. The genie's out of the bottle. I mean, like I say in my presentation, like I always say to people, the conspiracy theorist at this point is the guy that disbelieves UFOs, the guy that doesn't believe in UFOs. That's the conspiracy theory now. It's flipped because it's incontrovertible. UFOs are real. Deal with it. They're real. I mean, we have to deal with it.
You might not know what they are, but you have to.
Exactly.
They're real.
You might not know what they are, but let's get beyond let's get beyond the notion that they're not real or they're just some kind of a metaphysical ruse. No, they're real. They're real. They're advanced aerospace vehicles. That's exactly what the Pentagon is saying, and from an unknown origin.
Yep.
Okay, so at least accept that.
Off-world.
Even off-world.
Off-world.
Yeah. Eric Davis, the astrophysicist from Baylor University, who briefed the Senate Arms Committee and briefed the Pentagon on materials that he had examined, that he says he had personally examined, touched them. He says these materials were not created on Earth. They're not on. How does he know that? Because there are certain materials that simply are not found on Earth. There's raw material that we don't have on planet Earth.
And the Senate's work, I mean, you mentioned this yesterday, you could see it, I talked about it a few weeks ago, where now they're passing laws, they're passing to create departments in order for communication.
At the Pentagon, briefings with the Secretary of State and the director of the Department of the DIA, the Department of
Defense
Intelligence Agency. And so the highest levels of our government now have to brief Congress on UFOs.
And protection, right? Because they're phrasing it as a security.
And by the way, Congress is already beyond, are UFOs real?
Oh,
They're beyond that.
Yep.
They're beyond that
Look
now. Now we
up.
want to know about them.
Yep.
Okay, give us briefings now. What's going on? Because we feel like this could be a national security threat. They already moved on beyond UFOs being real. So anybody who's still trying to figure out if UFOs are real, they better just get on board and realize, okay, they are real. Congress is being briefed. They're taking this seriously. They believe it's a national security threat. So we're way beyond, are UFOs real? Or I want to believe,
exactly.
We're way beyond that at this point.
So part of that, this would be a nice smooth transition back, because with this latest FOIA report that came out, you quoted a whole bunch from it, which was awesome. It's addressing some of the circumstances surrounding these UFO craft, but it also helps us to ask the question, who's piloting them, and also it goes back to the alien abduction, which you spent some time on.
There's medical. We'll see. So the Pentagon, the government always works like this. They contract out research, and then those companies, those organizations that do the research for the government, then submit reports back to the Pentagon, and so that's what this was. The FOIA document request, the document dump that came from the Pentagon on the 5th of April this year. It contained a lot of this research that was done, paid for by the government, done for the Pentagon, or the Defense Intelligence Agency specifically, and these organizations that submitted this research are saying, look, not only are UFOs real, but there's national security implications here, and specifically, there's a lot of medical data showing that people who come into contact with UFOs are being injured. There's radiation burns, and they say specifically that the radiation burns are coming from electromagnetism, electromagnetic radiation, which means the craft's propulsion
I think
system.
they even use that word.
Right, exactly right. So pilots who get too close to the craft when it's energized are getting radiated. And there's also talk of time dilation, which means like time distortion, because they're coming into a gravity field, and we know that gravity distorts space-time. So we would expect
Einstein,
that to happen.
yeah,
Exactly, Einsteinian physics. So there's also cases of apparent abduction and unaccounted for pregnancy that show up in these documents.
I mean, this isn't our words. I mean, this is stuff that people have been talking about for a long time.
This was in the FOIA request documents.
And this is even, what I thought was interesting is, this is 10 years old.
Oh yeah, this is old stuff. And you know, keep in mind that this is all surface level information. This is all entry level information. When you say, does the government, if someone asks, does the government know about UFOs? But there are individuals, there's probably only a handful of individuals at the Pentagon who have cosmic clearance, who have the clearance to actually know about the reverse engineering that's been going on for decades. You know, Gary Stearman knows a little bit about that.
Yeah, he does.
There's to actually access information regarding those black projects. There's only probably a handful of people at the Pentagon who have that clearance. I'll tell you who doesn't have that clearance. Joe Biden doesn't have that. Doesn't have that clearance. President Trump didn't have that clearance. President Obama didn't have that clearance. Presidents don't have the need to know. They come and go.
Yep.
They don't even have access to those facilities. That was that was a dispute that Eisenhower got into with these military contractors and with the military industrial complex. He wanted to get into one of these facilities, and he threatened to use. I forget which division of the Army out there. He threatened to bring in the Army and break the gates open. You know, and so finally they let him send some of his guys over there to see what was going on. And what they discovered was pretty astounding. So this has been going on for a long time. People say, well, that's a function of the deep state. It's deeper than the deep state. It's a function of the dumb state, the deep underground military bases. So I call it the dumb state. Yeah. And it's, you know, there's a double entendre in there. So it's
playing with fire. Yeah.
And when you start talking about the dumb state, and again, that is a reference to the deep underground military bases where a lot of these projects are being developed. You're talking about cosmic level clearance. You're talking about military contractors that are reverse engineering alien technology from crash retrievals. And you're possibly even interfacing with beings. And you know, I think it's really, really nefarious. Out of sight, out of mind, out of the jurisdiction of the U.S. government. That's what we're talking about. I mean,
but yet funded, right?
Funded in part with U.S. Taxpayer dollars, but not completely, because if something is being funded with U.S. taxpayer dollars and it's being developed by the government, then we have the right to know. We can do a FOIA request. But guess what? If something is getting dark money, meaning that the funding doesn't come, or at least in part doesn't come from U.S. taxpayers, and it's not the military directly developing it, rather it's the military using contractors, and guess what? You don't have any right to know. You can't do a FOIA request on a military contractor. They don't have to share anything that they know with you. And so that's why I say that when we say that, what does the government know? I would like to know what the the aerospace contractors know. That's what does people at Lockheed Martin know? And I think Gary Stearman would affirm that.
So, you know, as you and I have talked before, and when we come back to some of this, when we think about the theology and the Bible, and again, the gospel is central to all of this, and that's 100% certain. You've told me, hey, Mondo, you know, as I think about some of this stuff, I could be wrong on this. I could be wrong on this. I'm not wrong on the gospel, of course, but what we're trying to do, I think, is right. God gave us brains. We're looking at the data, and then we're trying to interpret it the best we can.
That's right.
Through some conjecture and speculation, but logical.
We're flawed. We all have flawed perspectives. We have to start there. We know in part.
Exactly.
In part.
But
we
it's
see
not
through
wrong.
a glass dimly.
Yeah, it's not wrong to try to say, hey, when you look at the data, a little bit that we have, as you mentioned, and try to bring it together in a plausible scenario as it relates to the end times. Talk about that.
Yeah. So, you know, I mean, you know, we're probing. You always want to try and have a grasp on reality, and then bring it back into a biblical paradigm, because that's where we're anchored. We're anchored in the gospel of Christ. I'm not anchored on any kind of a doctrinal position. I'm not anchored on the rapture. I'm not anchored on baptism. I'm not anchored on whatever speaking tongues, elements of eschatology. None of that's my anchor. My anchor is the gospel of Christ. What we were talking about earlier. Jesus became a man to redeem, and he was who he said he was. He was the Son of God. That's my anchor. And all this other stuff is ancillary to that fundamental doctrine. And I have opinions on things, but so what? They're just opinions. I'm interested in people understanding the gospel of Christ, anchoring in the gospel of Christ. And now let's deal with the reality of the world.
In a friendly, gentle, fun way.
That's right,
It's fun. This is an adventure, right?
Yeah. So all these other things are happening around us, and so the more we can understand and interpret reality, I think the more our paradigm is informed, and it's nice to it's important to have and your paradigm is your worldview. And I look at a paradigm like a garden. That's how I think about a paradigm. It's like the garden of my mind, and we're constantly trying new things. We're pruning, we're clipping, we're pulling weeds up, and so what I want to do is I want my paradigm to reflect reality. I want it to be expandable and flexible, so that, because if your worldview is rigid and you're like, oh, I don't believe in UFOs, well, what happens when it becomes so incontrovertible that you suddenly have to deal with it? Yeah. What it's going to do is it's going to shatter your paradigm. And a lot of people will have trouble with that. Some people might walk away from the faith. Yep. But if you're anchored in Christ, if in the gospel of Christ, then nothing's really going to shake you or move you, because it won't. The existence of it, people say, well, doesn't the existence of aliens, extraterrestrials, doesn't that impugn the gospel of Christ? This is the question that the Vatican is grappling with, and I can't believe that nobody has addressed this issue with these learned cardinals.
Have they not read Hebrews 2?
And bishops, exactly.
Right.
It's like you guys are contemplating. They actually believe at the Vatican that Jesus probably went and died for other aliens,
and they're going to baptize them.
Exactly. So they all have a Christ, that Christ went and it's like, excuse me? Yep. We know that he didn't do it for the angels.
Or anybody else, humanity.
So why should we expect him to do it for gray aliens or something? You people, you're supposed to be cardinals and bishops and learned men of the church, and you don't understand this fundamental thing? If Christ did not die for the angels, there's no reason we should expect him to be dying for some other alien species. It pertains to the human race, the gospel of Christ. So, and now we're not the center of creation. He is. Yep. But we are very special, and very special.
Extremely special.
In that the Son of God is also the Son of Man.
Yes. I think about that too, is, you think about Jesus making this choice, and, you talk to me, and especially like my daughters growing up, or just people in the church, you're like, don't you realize that, I would always ask this question, how many of you believe that Jesus right now in heaven is physically human? And they're like, I don't know, what do I say? I go, He became human forever.
Indisputable in the New Testament.
Exactly.
Indisputable.
Forever.
Yeah.
This race of humanity, the God himself added that to his base nature.
Yeah, he is human.
Forever.
That's right. He had to become human to deal with the sin of Adam. And this is something that I talked about yesterday in the Q&A is, we don't realize Jesus had the power to forgive sins before he went to the cross. I remember when I was a teenager and I read that and I went, what? I always thought that it was the cross that dealt with my sin. But here's the thing, Jesus, and this is, sacrifices, when you went and made a sacrifice as an ancient Hebrew, your sin could be forgiven. Your sin, but not the sin of Adam. Yeah. The sin of Adam had to be dealt with in a different way, original sin, because Adam was in a state of enmity. Adam and his offspring are in a state of enmity. And what brings reconciliation, according to the New Testament? The cross of Christ brings peace, reconciliation. That's the only thing that could have brought. So your personal sins can be forgiven, but reconciliation with the Father, which means being brought back into friendship, the opposite of enmity, right? We're at enmity. Your sins can be forgiven, but you're still at enmity because you're wearing a body of sin. The sin of Adam has not yet been dealt with. So Christ, he wore Adam and he crucified it. He took on our condition, became a human, and he nailed it to the cross. Yeah. And so that is where reconciliation comes from. So Jesus dealt with the sin of Adam, not just which we all bear. Paul says we wear it. We wear bodies. He said you're going to be sinning until you die because you're wearing it. This is a body of sin.
This is Romans 7. It's all
that's
there.
Right. But the resurrection of Christ, when we were resurrected and rectified, we're no longer wearing a body of sin. We're being reset to the blueprint of Adam through Christ, and now we are no longer inheriting the curse of Adam. We are now inheriting, in a sense, the blessing of Christ, the righteousness of Christ. We put off the sin of Adam. We put on the righteousness of Christ. That's the new robes and the new clothes. that the prodigal son is clothed with. And so Christ had to deal with the sin of Adam. Jesus had to deal with the sin of Adam at the cross. He could forgive sins of your personal sin, just like the sacrifices, the doves and the whatever for specific sins. Remember, there's different sacrifices. Your personal sins, but the sin of Adam had to be dealt with by the Son of God on the cross. Reconciliation. See, I never really understood what reconciliation meant. You always hear redemption. These are all different things. Redemption means to be purchased back from who? From the swineherd. Parable of the prodigal son. That's why the parable of the prodigal son is so amazing. It's the gospel encapsulated in this story.
It's such a great, to me, it's such a great pattern for looking at, again, the whole story. You're like,
the whole story is there. The whole story is there. See, and you know what happens here? The prodigal son, what does he do? He recognizes his depravity.
Yeah.
He recognizes, what's that? Repentance. He recognizes, even the servants in my father's house have it better than me. He recognizes his depravity. That's how you come to Christ. You recognize your depravity. Something's wrong.
And I need to go back to Dad.
I need to go back home. That's right. That's exactly right. And so, he was indentured to the swineherd. And what does Christ do? He redeems us. That means he goes and he pays for us. He purchases it. That's what the book of Revelation says. Regarding the Lamb, the Song of the Lamb, you purchased men for God. That's redemption. But that's redemption. Reconciliation is you are an enemy, now you're a friend. That's through the cross of Christ. So Jesus redeems us so that we might be reconciled through the cross, so that we might be restored to everything that was lost and Adam brought back into the family. Redemption, reconciliation, restoration. That's the gospel of Christ.
I mean, if you want, you read Romans 5 and then Romans 8, and really, if you don't get excited about that, I don't know what to tell you.
There's nothing that you could possibly imagine that's more exciting. Nothing transhumanism could ever offer. Posthumanism. You can have your robots and your extended life and your interfacing with the internet. I want to go back into the family. I want to fellowship with the Father and with the Son of God and with the elder siblings and my elder siblings in the kingdom of heaven. We were created to be a part of the family. We were created for fellowship with the creator of the universe. There is nothing that even comes close to that.
And not just to be, so you have this relational fellowship, and then, hey son, your daughters, of course, hey, I got a task for you.
Exactly.
And then you were meant to be my vice regents, and now we're going to do it in righteousness and in glorified bodies. And we don't know what the end game holds. We know that Earth is our domain.
I know where you're going. Exactly. It's very exciting.
It's very
That's
exciting.
why people think, people want to shrink the universe and just make it about the Earth. And I'm thinking, well, hold on here. Why are you doing
base,
that? Yeah, exactly. This is home base. After the resurrection, this is home base. What if he's like, go explore, go whatever.
Hey, I got something for you. Hey,
exactly.
Come here. I got. There's this galaxy over here.
Exactly.
I got something.
Why not?
Why do you make it so big?
Exactly right. This could just be the beginning of the story for us. And I think it is. I think we're at the beginning of the human story, not at the end of it, at the beginning. And so when we're rectified, brought back into the family, who knows what's coming for us? I know we're going to rule and reign with Christ, but what does that mean? I think the kingdom of heaven is galactic, honestly, and people get upset about that. But and so
I wouldn't be content just here in this galaxy.
Exactly. and I talk about the medieval cosmology where we envision only four characters in the universe. You have God, angels, demons, and men. That's the entire constellation of higher conscious characters. And I'm saying, no.
I think the average church person, because maybe they lack some biblical literacy, they don't realize how awesome our future is. It isn't some pie in the sky, the typical medieval cosmology, or just, or even the end, you're like, really? No, it's far greater.
Yeah, what most Christians think, I'm gonna die and go to heaven. You're missing the point. You're not dying and going to heaven. You're going to be resurrected back into the family of God through Christ. And that's much more exciting and dynamic. And you know when all of this occurred to me? It's amazing because I can pull myself right back to the moment where everybody. I got the question a few times yesterday. When did you start thinking about all this? I can tell you the moment that I started thinking about this. I was in the Amazon jungle, I was staying with a hunter friend of mine, him and his wife, and a boy named Lucho, who was their nephew. And we canoed deep into the Amazon. It was crazy. I mean, we were deep in the Amazon, and he was hunting. And one morning we got up, and he decided to go into the jungle. We were at a little camp. We made a little camp on the brook of this river called the River Sarah, the River Sarah. And he and his wife and Lucho went into the jungle to hunt, and he said, "Hey, you want to come with me?" And I often did, and we'd shoot monkeys and stuff and eat them. But that morning I said, "You know what? I'm just going to hang out here." And they went into the jungle, and I remember, I don't know why this happened, but all of a sudden I felt like the Spirit of God just visited me, and I just got this download. Here I am standing in the middle of the jungle, all the life surrounding me, the noises, the animals, the running water in front of me, and I'm just standing there. I started to contemplate Eden and think, what was man really created for? And it's not hard to contemplate Eden when you're in the Amazon. Of course, when the mosquitoes start devouring you, you kind of feel like you're contemplating hell more than Eden, I think, at that point. But that's where it began for me. That's where I started to get the download of what does it mean to be a human being? We all know that we're fallen, but from what height have we fallen? And that's, boom, I just started, and I remember I was literally pacing back and forth in the jungle and just like speaking out loud and just, like contemplating these things out loud, just kind of talking to myself and praying and working through. And that's the moment at which what I talk about in Birthright was pressed into my heart like a seed. It was just a seed, like pressed into the soil of my heart, and it was just sort of growing and growing and growing, and I didn't even realize it, because when I went to write this book, I wasn't going to write the stuff I wrote in this book. I was just going to talk about transhumanism and so forth, and when I started to write this book, that's not what came out of me. What came out of me was like this, the going back to the beginning and who Adam was, and talking about mankind and the purpose of mankind and dominion and all this kind of stuff. Like, where did this come from? And then I remembered, oh yeah, there's a seed pushed into the soil of my heart, and now it's grown into something. And so when I went to write, that's what came out. So that's where all this began for me, and it's just, every now and again, even when I was on stage talking, I'll have a flashback of pacing back and forth in the jungle. I was 19 years old, and so.
But it's the theology, I think, again, for you guys, read Hebrews chapter 2 or Psalm 8. I mean, here you have, what is man that you're mindful of? I mean, here's the psalmist David, right? And he's asking, and here you are, you have in your David experience.
You have crowned him with glory
like,
and
what?
honor. You've made him to be a little lower than the heavenly beings.
For a little while.
Yeah, for a little while. Yeah, a little lower than the heavenly beings. And it's like David.
That's a contemplation.
Yeah.
He's thinking the same thing that
He's
God
thinking
put
the
in your
same
heart,
thing.
huh?
He's thinking the same thing. And you have given him dominion over the works of your hands.
Yeah. But we don't see it yet.
No.
But we will.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we still have dominion of the earth. We're just really, really bad regions.
Yep, that's very true.
We're really rebellious.
We're sinful, we're rebellious.
We're in a state of enmity with our Maker. Of course, the cross, for us, for believers, the cross has brought reconciliation. But the rest of humanity, it's not just that they disbelieve God. They're born at enmity with Him. That's what we have to understand. The world is at enmity with God. That's why to have friendship with the world. You
make God an enemy.
You make God an enemy because the world is at enmity with God, but the cross of Christ brings reconciliation with the Father. And so, and that's why, you can't reform the world. There's so many preachers out there today, modern Christians, who want to reform the world. No, this is at enmity with the Father. You need to be reconciled to the Father. That's the problem.
It's got to be completely remade, undone.
That's right.
I mean, I think for us too, as believers, we're born again. We are right now children of God. I mean, there's a future, but yet right now.
Yeah.
And so we're part of advancing this knowledge and the kingdom of God.
That's right.
And reaching our lost brothers and sisters.
That's right.
I mean, so we have a task to do to get as many as we can.
That's right.
But what? Paul says in 2 Corinthians 5, He's given us the ministry of reconciliation. So now God has
given us the ministry of reconciliation. Isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
That we are now those who go out and bring in the lost sheep, bring them into Christ, That's the ministry of, we lead them to Christ. That's the ministry of reconciliation. It's amazing. Like we're going out and finding the other prodigal sons who are going to be restored to the family.
Yeah.
That's it's amazing. It really is. Yeah. Instead of just going out and, it's a different idea than just let's go save the lost. No, now the lost is, it's a much different picture for me. It's not just saving people from hell. No. It's finding the prodigal son, bringing them back into the family of God through Christ. That's what Jesus said, in my Father's house are many rooms. Yeah. You know, if it weren't so, would I have told you? And if I go there to prepare a place for you, I will come back to get you so that you may be with me where I am. That's the prodigal son. He's coming to get the prodigals, to bring them back into the family. That's the ministry of reconciliation that we as believers in Christ now have. That's our job, is to find the prodigal sons.
And all these issues, you know, again, even in your book, Birthright, all of these things, what's great is you get the theology, and then you start thinking coherently through all this, and you begin to bring it together. And again, we don't do it. The gospel's perfect, but all these ancillary issues, we're like, wow, I see all this, and then the data. You know, we could talk all day.
Yeah, and then we interface with guys like I interface with guys like you and Gary and Bob Ulrich and L.A. Marzulli, and it's like, and then we just start like mixing and matching things and grabbing the things that make more sense. So yeah, that's a better idea than what I had. You push that off the table and you adopt a new idea. And instead of conflicting with each other, you're just constantly you're pruning that garden, that paradigm that I was talking about. And you know, L.A. Marzulli comes along and says, "Hey, I was thinking about, oh, that's great. I'm going to take that in my garden, and I'm going to uproot this thing because that's better, right?" But we're in flux. We're constantly trying to improve upon our understanding of the world, anchored in the gospel of Christ. And it's not contentious, it's fun. It's edifying, is what it is. Yeah.
What else are you working on? I know you kind of shared a trailer. Share with the audience a little bit of what you're working on, where they can find it.
Me and Gary Haven, who was one of the speakers at the conference, we've been working on a television show. We filmed a bunch of stuff in Peru. And we have new technology, ground-penetrating radar technology that's drone operated. There's only a few units in the world. We have one of them. And we've been going around exploring and making discoveries with our technology, discovering lost cities of the Inca. We were in Peru. The first few episodes of our new show, what we're doing is we're filming a TV show. And our first few episodes, we were in Peru, and it's an ongoing project. And so the exciting news is that the show has been picked up by the Epoch Times.
Oh, awesome.
The Epoch Times, many people are familiar with the Epoch Times. I think they're the best paper in the world, news organization in the world. The Epoch Times has a streaming platform called Epoch TV, and it's really great, conservative. It's a great streaming platform, and so that's where our show is going to be. It's going to go on Epoch TV. It's going to go on Epoch TV as soon as I finish editing it. So people say, when? As soon as I finish editing it. So I've got one episode that's done, ready to go. I've got two more. We want to get 3 episodes done so we can upload at least 3 episodes at one time. I'm in the process of editing episode 2. I'm guessing sometime in late summer, fall, people should see our show pop up on Epoch Times. So go subscribe to Epoch TV. They got great content. You know, one of the ladies that was here at the conference, Tina Griffin, she's got a syndicated radio program, really great lady. She's got a show on Epoch Times and a lot of conservative voices. So, you know, it's better than Netflix.
Yeah. Or Gaia.
Or Gaia. Yeah. So it's a great home for people like us who are conservative Christian. The guys that own and run Epoch Times are conservative Christians, and so it's a great platform. And they got a global reach. You know, they're very reputable news organization. So Epoch TV. You won't find us there yet, but our show is coming. And when it does, we'll make a big deal about it. I'll put a trailer out. I'll announce it.
We'll have you back.
Yeah. I'll have to come over and talk to you guys, and really excited about it. It's a fun show.
The trailer looked incredible.
It's fun to travel around the world with Gary Haven and my team and film this show. So, and there's, you know, I've got some characters in the show that people are going to recognize, like L.A. Marzulli makes an appearance in a second. We're investigating the elongated skulls. L.A. Marzulli was with me in Paracas. Jamie Walden, your audience might be familiar with Jamie Walden. He was on my team. He's he's my tactical operator.
That's good.
And some other people you might recognize are make appearances, and so we got some fun things in the works.
So for those that, if you missed this conference, tell them how they can find it.
You can go to birthrightconference.com, birthrightconference.com, and you can right now sign up for video on demand, which is basically a rental. We have a over 6 hours worth of content, really affordable price. You'll be able to rent the whole conference. DVDs, we're working on getting DVDs out. I don't want to make a commitment yet because it's really, really hard to get DVDs done anymore. But we're working on DVDs. I know a lot of people, they don't want to watch stuff on their laptop. They want to put it on their TV so they can show their friends. We get that. We're working hard to get DVDs out. Probably going to have them. If you are interested in getting DVDs, just subscribe to my webpage at timothyalberino.com. Subscribe to my mailing list so that when we get DVDs out, I can let you know. Also, even more importantly, subscribe to my YouTube channel because that's where I'll make the announcement. As long as I don't get kicked off.
Yeah, not yet. You're hanging in there.
I'm sure a lot of the things we talked about at this conference would get me kicked off of YouTube like in 5 minutes.
Yep. You got to be selective.
Yeah. So, we talked a lot about for the audience. We addressed Gary Haven, Mancow Muller addressed the stuff and talked a lot about. So we did deal with that. I know that's on people's minds.
Yeah,
What about that was addressed in this conference as well?
Awesome, Tim. Pleasure, man.
Yeah, always a pleasure. Always a pleasure.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming to the conference.
Yeah, this was great. We figured this would be a great time to come and
was
just
fun.
to get the information. So for those watching, here we are. You can go to Tim's website, of course, and get it. You will like it very much. The information is cutting edge. With all the speakers that were here, you won't get this really anywhere else as far as I know. But appreciate you watching. Appreciate this update as well, and we will see you next time.